Hello everyone and welcome to today's discussion. Now, before we begin, I want to say that this discussion is not just a conversation for students of English literature. It is a topic that extends far beyond academia. Feminism is about society, history, and the way we understand gender in our daily lives. Now, feminism is often misunderstood. Some people see it as a movement for equality, and some people have misconceptions about its purpose. In today's discussion, we will be exploring feminism based on its actual principles and historical context. So, if you are open to learning and engaging with different perspectives, then I encourage you to stay and listen. Now, what is feminism? Feminism. Just hearing the word sparks debates. Some say it is about equality, and some people think that it is about women taking over. But what is feminism really? Feminism is about equal rights and opportunities for all genders. It is not about making women superior or bringing men down. Instead, it is about ensuring that everyone, regardless of gender, gets the same access to opportunities, resources, and respect in society. But if feminism is about equality, why not just call it humanism or equalism? It is because feminism focuses on the historical and systematic inequalities faced by women and marginalized gender. It acknowledges that for centuries, societies have been structured in ways that favor men over women, and change requires addressing these imbalances. Therefore, feminism is not a single movement with one perspective. Different people experience gender inequality differently. While some may focus on workplace discrimination, others emphasize reproductive rights, safety, or representation in media. Now, feminism is diverse, and that is what makes it relevant in different social contexts. There is not just one feminism. Different feminism exist, like liberal feminism, which is focused on legal rights, radical feminism, which challenges deep rooted systems of oppression, and intersectional feminism, which considers race, class, and sexuality in gender equality. So, feminism is not about hating men, it is about breaking down barriers so that everyone can have the same rights and freedom. Now, feminism did not start as a fully developed movement. It began as a fight for basic legal rights, the right to vote, own property, and be recognized as an equal citizen. And this was the first wave of feminism which took place from the 19th century to the early 20th century. But how did it all begin? Before feminism, women had almost no legal rights. In most societies, a woman's identity was tied to her father or husband. Women could not vote, hold public office, or make financial decisions. And if they were married, they had no control over property or earnings, and everything legally belonged to their husbands. Now, education and work were restricted. Higher education was mostly reserved for men. Women were expected to focus on being wives and mothers rather than pursuing careers. And the few jobs available to women, like teaching or factory work, paid extremely low wages. Now, women started questioning their roles and demanding equality. Writers like Mary Wollstonecraft, who wrote A Vindication of the Rights of Women in 1792, argued that women were just as intelligent as men but were denied education. The Seneca Falls Conventions in 1848 was a turning point, and this was the first major women's rights convention in the US. Stanton and others drafted the Declaration of Sentiments demanding the right to vote, work, and be treated as equals. This was the moment feminism became an organized movement. Women realized that without political power, they could not change laws that kept them oppressed. The suffrage movement became the biggest goal of the first wave. Women held protests, hunger strikes, and even faced imprisonment for demanding voting rights. The movement was not peaceful. Women faced intense backlash. Many men and even some women opposed women's suffrage, arguing that politics was too complex for women. And the US finally granted women the right to vote in 1920 with the 19th Amendment. The UK allowed women over 30 to vote in 1918, and by 1928, all women could vote. Other countries followed, but some, like Switzerland, did not allow women to vote until the 1970s. Now, before the first wave, if a woman inherited land, it automatically became her husband's property. Feminists fought for property rights laws, allowing women to legally own and control their assets. Women fought for the right to work outside the home and earn their own wages. Therefore, the first wave laid the foundation for future labor rights movements for women. And feminists pushed for universities to accept female students. By the early 20th century, women were entering professions like medicine and law, fields previously closed to them. So, what are the impact or what are the results of the first wave of feminism? Number one, it proved that women could fight and win legal rights. Number two, it changed the perception of women's roles in society. Number three, it set the stage for future waves of feminism which would focus on social and workplace equality. Now, the first wave of feminism was not about lifestyle choices, it was about survival. Women fought for the basic rights we take for granted today. But was winning the vote enough? Or did the real fight begin afterward? And here comes the second wave of feminism. The second wave of feminism began in the 1960s and continued through the 1980s. It was a time when the fight for women's rights expanded beyond the vote. And this wave is often associated with the push for gender equality in all aspects of life, from reproductive rights to workplace equality. It was a more radical movement than the first wave, addressing the root causes of gender inequality in a way that had not been done before. Now let's delve into how the second wave changed everything for women's rights. After World War II, women were expected to return to traditional roles as homemakers. Many women who had entered the workforce during the war were pushed back into the kitchen when men came home. And at the same time, women had limited access to higher education and career advancement. Social norms were rigid and gender roles were clearly defined. But in the 1960s, things started changing. The civil rights movement was in full swing and social movements were gaining momentum around the world. Women, inspired by the civil rights struggle and anti-war activism, began to organize and demand equal rights in ways that were bold and direct. Reproductive rights were at the forefront of the second wave of feminism. Feminists fought the access to birth control, which was limited or illegal in many parts of the world. They also pushed for abortion rights as women were often forced to carry unwanted pregnancies to term. Women were not just fighting for the right to work, they were fighting for equal pay and the end of workplace discrimination. Laws like the Equal Pay Act of 1963 and Civil Rights Act of 1964 were introduced, though implementation and progress were slow. The second wave of feminism also expanded its focus beyond laws and politics. Feminists declared that the personal is political. It means that every aspect of a woman's life, from family dynamics to intimate relationships, was shaped by the patriarchy and gender inequality. Issues like sexuality, domestic violence, and marriage were brought into public discourse in ways that had never happened before. Women started to fight against the beauty standards that were imposed on them. Feminists began to challenge the idea that a woman's worth was tied to her looks or ability to be pleasing to men. The body positivity movement began to take shape, encouraging women to reject unrealistic beauty ideals and embrace their own identities. The second wave produced some of the most influential feminist writers and thinkers. Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex, which was published in 1949, heavily influenced feminist thought during the second wave, and this encourages women to challenge the idea that they were the other. Feminists also pushed for female representation in the media. The 1960s and 70s saw the rise of television shows and movies that depicted women as complex, strong characters rather than just wives or mothers. While still limited, this helped to challenge traditional roles and show women in new empowered lights. The second wave also achieved significant victories, but it also faced backlash. As more women entered the workforce and demanded reproductive rights, some conservatives and men in power pushed back, claiming that feminism was ruining the family or undermining men's roles in society. Anti-feminist movements grew in strength, but feminism endured. It inspired future generations of women to continue the fight for equality in every sphere of life. Reproductive rights were expanded with legal access to birth control and abortion. Workplace equality became a central issue with laws pushing for equal pay and anti discrimination protections. Women's lives became political as feminists raised awareness of issues like sexual violence and domestic abuse. The second wave of feminism inspired the third wave of feminism, which would focus on even more inclusive intersectional issues of feminism. Therefore, the second wave of feminism reshaped women's rights and created a foundation for the right for equality in the decades that followed. But was the fight truly over? Because the third wave of feminism would take on new challenges and voice. By the 1990s, feminism had already achieved major legal and social changes, but a new generation of feminists felt that there were still unresolved issues. The third wave of feminism emerged as a response to both the successes and limitations of the second wave. Unlike its predecessors, this wave focused on individual experiences, intersectionality, and breaking rigid gender norms. Earlier, feminist movements often focused on the struggles of middle class white women, but the third wave feminists emphasized that not all women experience oppression in the same way. Intersectionality became a key concept, acknowledging that race, class, sexuality, disability, and culture all shape a person's experience of gender based oppression. Therefore, feminism needed to include all women, not just those from privileged backgrounds. And unlike the second wave, which sometimes viewed femininity as a tool of oppression, the third wave encouraged women to embrace their own choices, whether that meant wearing makeup, being sexually expressive, or rejecting traditional beauty standards altogether. Feminists of this era argued that empowerment looks different for everyone. Some women felt strong in traditional roles, while others wanted to break free from them entirely. And the third wave expanded feminism beyond just women's rights and started questioning rigid gender roles altogether. Ideas about masculinity and femininity were deconstructed. Why should men always be strong and unemotional? Why would women be expected to be nurturing and passive? And this also opened the door for greater recognition of LGBTQ identities within feminism. Trans rights and non binary identities became part of feminist discussions. With the rise of TV, movies, and the internet, media representations became a major feminist concern. Therefore, the third wave feminists called out sexism in advertising, music videos, and Hollywood, where women were often objectified or sidelined. The third wave overlapped with the early days of the internet, which allowed feminists to organize, educate, and spread awareness online. Online forums, blogs, and early social media platforms created new spaces for feminist discussions beyond an academic and political setting. And this also led to global feminism, where activists from different parts of the world could connect and share their experiences. So, the third wave of feminism challenged the idea that all women experience oppression the same way, emphasizing diversity. It embraced individual choices, allowing feminism to be more personal and flexible. It opened discussions on gender fluidity and the inclusion of LGBTQ identities. It called out sexism in pop culture and media, changing the way women were portrayed. And it paved the way for online feminism, leading to movements like Me Too in the fourth wave of feminism. Now, feminism did not stop evolving after the third wave. By 2010, a new wave of feminist activism emerged, shaped by the rise of social media and digital platforms. The fourth wave of feminism is centered on intersectionality, online activism, and challenging systematic oppression in both personal and institutional spaces. Now, what is the biggest shift in the fourth wave of feminism? The internet became a battleground for feminism. Movements like Me Too, Time's Up, Yes All Women, and Everyday Sexism spread rapidly on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, allowing people from all around the world to share their experiences. Survivors of sexual harassment and abuse spoke out publicly, challenging powerful men in politics, entertainment, and corporate industries. Online activism gave feminism a global reach, and unlike previous waves, which were often confined to books, conferences, or protests, the fourth wave happens in real time, and everyone can be a feminist activist, from influencers with millions of followers to everyday people sharing personal stories. While previous waves of feminism fought for women's rights, the fourth wave of feminism recognizes that oppression is not one size fits all. Women of different races, sexualities, abilities, and socioeconomic backgrounds experience discrimination in unique ways. Feminism must fight against all forms of oppression, not just sexism, but also racism, classism, homophobia, transphobia, and ableism. The fourth wave demands more representation in workplaces, politics, media, and leadership roles. It is no longer enough to have just one strong female character in a movie or a token woman in a company boardroom. Real change means dismantling structure that keep marginalized people out of power. The Me Too movement was a turning point in the fourth wave of feminism, exposing how widespread sexual harassment is across country. Survivors who were once afraid to speak out gained strength through collective action. High profile men in Hollywood, politics, and media were held accountable for years of abuse. Consent and rethinking power dynamics became major discussions. Feminism in this era fights against victim blaming and the normalization of harassment. Concepts like enthusiastic consent and toxic masculinity became widely discussed in mainstream media, and the fight for equal pay is still ongoing. So, while laws exist to protect women from wage discrimination, the gender pay gap persists, especially for women of color and LGBTQ individuals. Feminists are demanding pay transparency and workplace policies that support women, like paid maternity leave and equal opportunities for leadership. Workplace harassment is being challenged more than ever. Therefore, the fourth wave of feminism pushes for stronger policies against sexual harassment, fair promotions, and better work life balance. Therefore, the fourth wave has been heavily involved in fighting for reproductive justice. Feminists continue to advocate for access to birth control, safe abortions, and maternal health care. Governments and courts still try to control reproductive rights, sparking global protests and legal battles. Therefore, the fourth wave of feminism uses digital activism to spread awareness and mobilize change worldwide. It pushes for intersectionality, making feminism more inclusive than ever. It calls out sexual harassment and rape culture, demanding real accountability. It fights for reproductive rights, ensuring people have control over their own bodies. And it challenges workplace discrimination, advocating for pay equity and better policies. Therefore, feminism today is not just about women, it is about fighting all systems of inequality. Therefore, the fourth wave is shaping the future in real time. What do you think will be the next big challenge feminism takes on? Do share your views in the comments. And if you think that this video has helped you in any way or the other, do like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.